And the next characteristic that he gives us in verse 5 is that the tongue can be unruly. He says, even so the tongue is a little member and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. When I see this verse here, I can't help but think of Smokey the Bear. He says, only you can prevent forest fires. We see on the news every year those wildfires out there in California. It seems like always at least one of those is the cause is blamed on somebody just throwing a cigarette butt out the window. And hundreds of thousands of acres are burned up. Homes are destroyed. Entire communities and towns are evacuated to avoid the destruction of the fire from just that one little spark. So it is with the tongue. In Proverbs chapter 26 and verse 20. Proverbs chapter 26 and verse 20, Solomon tells us that where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. Every one of us has had at one time or another in our lives, or has known somebody in their lives that has had drama to deal with in their life. Lots of strife, turmoil. And when you stop and you think about it, all of that strife can be traced back to an unruly tongue. To a tongue that was saying things that should not have said. Indeed, only you can prevent forest fires. Again, in Proverbs chapter 15, verses 1 and 2, we learn that grievous words stir up anger, but a soft answer turneth away wrath. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. The unruly tongue. And here it is again. The tongue, unrestrained, causes great damage. Furthers that strife, fuels the fire. But yet when the tongue is properly restrained and utilized properly, that very same tongue can put out those fires that have been started perhaps by somebody else, or maybe even yourself. Verse 6, and the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. Excuse me. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire of hell. The tongue, such a small member of the body, just like that rudder of a ship. And yet, through the words that it utters, when it's not restrained, it can defile our entire body. Christ knew this when He spoke in Matthew chapter 15, beginning in verse 11. Matthew chapter 15, beginning in verse 11, Christ says, not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defiles the man. And then verse 18, he says, but those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands defileth not a man, because Christ and His disciples have been called into question for eating food after not having ceremonially washed their hands. Not that they were following bad hygiene, but that they weren't following Jewish tradition. And Christ says that it's that comes out of the mouth that defiles us. Well, what is it that comes out of the mouth? It's when the mouth, the tongue, unrestrained and unruly, speaks from the heart. And we always think about sin and temptation as this outward force. Our adversary, the devil, a roaring lion, seeking about whom he may devour. And this is true to an extent. But yet the temptation, ultimately, comes from within. And our Lord's brother knew this. In James chapter 1, verse 14, he said that every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lusts and enticed. And so these desires that we have in our heart, these lusts, because we are all tempted, we all sin and fall short of the glory of God, Romans chapter 3 and verse 23. Even our Lord Christ was tempted, but without sin, Hebrews 4:12. But the temptation comes from within, comes from the heart. And so when our tongue is unrestrained, it speaks from the heart. We put our mouth in gear before our brain. And we can see those words go out there. We just want to grab them back. But it's too late. The damage has been done. And there's nothing you can do to fix it. Nothing that can be done to take those words back. And so the unruly tongue can cause great damage to our souls and to those souls of people around us. Verses 7 and 8, he says, "For every kind of beast, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison." Well, there it is in verse 8. Nobody can tame the tongue. You might as well quit and go home. There's no hope. No, brethren, that's not what the writer is saying. But the key word there is the word tame. I think most of us here probably have or have had at some point in time a household pet, a dog or a cat or a bird, some animal that we love very much. We keep it even in the house with our family. And we feed that animal, we train it. Have you ever walked out of the house and left that animal alone with your children? Do you ever worry that that animal might turn on your kids and attack them while you're gone? Of course not. Why? Because that animal is tame. And yet, Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, he made national news when he was introducing his children to his family pet that happened to be a crocodile. Well, what's the difference? That crocodile was not tamed. Even though he could exercise control over it, it was not tamed. And Siegfried and Roy had become very well aware of this fact. In their Las Vegas show, they could take these large jungle cats, these lions and tigers and things, and train them. And at their very command, they would perform incredible tricks, great things that they could make these large cats do. And yet one day, one of those cats turned on its master and sent him to the hospital. Why? Because that tiger was not tame. And so just like those tigers, you always have to watch it. You always have to keep it restrained, keep it in check. And you think of the lion tamers in the circus. As long as they've got that whip in their hand and they don't turn their back on that lion, they can make that lion do whatever they want to, but as soon as they turn around and quit watching it, that lion gets them. That's what our tongue does. Nobody can tame the tongue, but we can restrain it and control it. And yet how many of us leave our tongue unrestrained and let it loose on those who are nearest to us? If we wouldn't do it with the tiger, why with the tongue? Because the tongue can cause even greater spiritual damage than that tiger ever thought about causing.